I'm Michael Martinez, and you're about to listen to an AI-generated discussion of my article, How Did Elvish Magic Work in Middle-earth? I'm making a few changes in the way I present these episodes, and I'm going to try and transition to a more traditional kind of podcast in the future. I've had a few complaints about the AI-generated talk, which is a little self-serving, I realize, but I don't have a whole lot of time to do this. Um, and the newness is kind of worn off of me now that I know what that tool can do. So this will be the last episode where you listen to an AI-generated discussion about my article.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're journeying into Tolkien's Middle-earth. Specifically, we want to unravel something about Elvish magic.
Right. It's often misunderstood, isn't it? People think spells and wizards waving wands, maybe.
Exactly. But Tolkien's idea was, well, deeper. We're using a really insightful article today. It's called How Did Elvish Magic Work in Middle-earth by Michael Martinez. It's on the Middle-earth blog.
Ah, yes. Martinez's work is great for digging into these things.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack this common idea, this misconception, and see what's really going on. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here is that Tolkien's magic, it isn't like, a D&D spell. It's not quantifiable like that.
All right.
It's more inherent.
Yeah.
Part of the world, part of the beings in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it has costs,
Yeah.
real costs, even if they're subtle.
So that's the mission then. To get that magic in Middle-earth wasn't just, poof, something happens.
Precisely. It had big implications and, crucially, limits and costs.
Yeah.
Even if they're not obvious right away.
That makes sense. And it leads right into this criticism that Michael Martinez actually heard himself
Oh.
back at the World Fantasy Con in '92.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
He said there was this panel, some well-known fantasy authors, and they were actually condemning Tolkien's magic.
Condemning it. Why?
Their big point was that his characters didn't seem to pay for it. You know, no costs, no limits. They called it a perpetual motion machine, basically.
Huh.
So the question for you listening is, were they right? Was Middle-earth magic just consequence-free?
Well, it's an understandable criticism if you just look at the surface.
Yeah.
But honestly, no, they were quite mistaken.
Okay, how so?
From Tolkien's view, there absolutely were costs and limits, just not mechanical ones. Not like putting coins in a slot machine.
Right. Not mana points.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tolkien thought of it more like a biological process, not chemical, but like how much stress and strain can a body, an elvish body maybe, endure? Using magic adds to that strain.
Like getting tired after running a long way, but...
Metaphysical. Sort of, yeah. A drain on your very being. And the reason people miss this, I think, is because Tolkien focused on the consequences of magic, not the how-to manual.
Ah, so you don't get the spell components list in the narrative.
You really don't.
Yeah.
You have to dig into his letters, the Silmarillion, the other writings, to piece together those underlying rules and costs.
Okay, so it's not a magical bank account depleting. It's more like a fundamental exhaustion. That's a really key difference.
Yes.
But why do you think even experienced fantasy writers miss that? Like those in the panel Martinez mentioned.
Well, I suspect it's because modern fantasy, a lot of it anyway, really leans into those clear, quantifiable magic systems. Spell slots, mana, rules you can learn and exploit.
Yeah, game mechanics almost.
Right. Tolkien, though, he wove magic into the fabric of the world. It was almost like an innate ability or like incredible craft. It wasn't always a separate thing called magic.
So it's just part of being an elf or Gandalf or Sauron.
Exactly. And readers, maybe conditioned by other books, look for those explicit rules that Tolkien deliberately kept, well, implicit. He showed the results, not the equations.
That makes a lot more sense. Showing, not telling. Okay, if we're talking consequences and inherent power,
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Let me guess. The One Ring.
You got it. The biggest, scariest example of magical cost, even if it wasn't elvish power behind it.
Oh, absolutely. The One Ring is probably the ultimate example of this whole idea. Sauron, this incredibly powerful being, a Maya originally.
Yeah, like a lesser god almost.
Right. He chose to pour a massive chunk of his own inherent power, his will, his malice, into this one object.
Externalizing it.
Exactly. Tolkien talks about this in Letter 211. He calls it a mythical take on putting your life or power into something external, something that can then be captured or destroyed.
And that has disastrous results for you.
Totally. You gain potency. Maybe you can exert your will over a wider range, but you lose direct control. It's exposed.
Like a king becoming dependent on his armies or his spies.
That's a good analogy. And Tolkien elaborated in Letter 131. While Sauron wore the ring, his power was massively boosted. But even when he didn't have it, the power was still out there, linked to him.
So he wasn't weaker just because it was lost.
Not immediately diminished, no.
Yeah.
Unless someone else took it and mastered it. That's the first big weakness.
Oh, right.
If someone strong enough, heroic enough, claimed the ring, they could potentially challenge Sauron himself, use his own power against him.
Wow. Usurp him.
Yes. And the second weakness, the ultimate cost. If the ring was unmade.
Yeah.
Destroyed utterly.
Then what?
Then all that power Sauron poured into it would just dissipate, be annihilated.
Yeah.
And Sauron himself would be reduced to, well, a shadow, a whisper of malice, essentially nothing.
And he never thought that could happen.
He couldn't conceive of it. He believed no one could destroy it, except in the fires where it was made, and he didn't think anyone would want to destroy such a powerful thing. Big miscalculation.
Huge. Okay, so externalizing power has massive risks. But what about the power within beings? Did using their own innate abilities have direct costs?
Definitely. It wasn't all tied to objects. There are real inherent limits. Sometimes they get pushed too far.
Like Gandalf.
Gandalf and the Balrog is a prime example. Remember in Moria, he says, "I am weary already."
Yeah, before the big fight on the bridge.
That wasn't just dramatic effect. It shows the immense strain, spiritual and physical, that just confronting this thing put on him.
And then the fight.
Cost him his life. He died. And crucially, he didn't just respawn. He was sent back in.
I'm going to interrupt the discussion there for a moment. The reason why Gandalf was already weary, and I didn't put this in the article, was that he had already confronted the Balrog earlier in the story. They kind of had a little duel outside the chamber of Mazerbal, where the Fellowship had fought off the orcs for a while. When the Balrog came, Gandalf used a word of power to drop just a huge, massive amount of mountain rock on top of him, which would have killed any normal being, but the Balrog shook it off. So there are other indications that Gandalf has been using his power prior up to this point. So that's why he was so weary. And I should mention also that the article was using these Maiaric displays of power as examples because that's where Tolkien spent most of his effort describing how magic was used in Middle-earth. But the same principles seem to apply for elves and even for men. There is at least one scene where Aragorn uses some magic. I'm going to let the AI discussion resume here.
Enhanced by a higher power, divine intervention.
The Valar.
Right. So even for an Istari, a wizard, one of these angelic beings sent.
Okay, so there was a mistake there that the AI made. Gandalf was sent back by Iluvatar. Tolkien himself pretty much established that. I'm not sure how the AI concluded that it was the Valar that sent Gandalf back to Middle-earth, but a lot of people assume that, I guess. So maybe that's where they got that from. There must be discussions or something on the web where people say things like that. These large language models are probabilistic. I'm not going to go into all that stuff, but they tend to go with whatever is most popular in their sources.
To help Middle-earth, there were absolute limits, fatal ones.
Okay, that's a clear limit. What about the elves themselves? The elven rings, for instance?
The 3 rings. Yeah, they had costs too, but maybe more subtle ones tied to their purpose.
Which wasn't domination, right? Unlike the One Ring.
No, not at all. They were about preservation, healing, understanding. One goal was apparently to let the wearers see the unseen, maybe communicate with elven spirits lingering in Middle-earth. And famously, they could slow down time's effects, hold back decay. That's why Rivendell and Lothlorien felt timeless.
Those safe havens.
Exactly. But here's the cost. The 3 rings were still fundamentally linked to the One Ring's power, even though Sauron never touched them. When the One Ring was destroyed,
their power faded too.
It failed. The preservation effect stopped. And for elves like Elrond and Galadriel, who relied on them to maintain those havens, it meant the end of their time in Middle-earth.
The weariness of the world caught up.
Precisely. A deep spiritual existential weariness. It basically compelled them to leave to sail west. Their work was done, and the magic sustaining it was gone.
Wow, that's profound. And there was another example, even more personal, Muriel.
Yes, Muriel Serinde, Fëanor's mother, A very tragic story. She died soon after giving birth to Fëanor.
Why? What was the connection?
Tolkien explained it in Laws and Customs Among the Eldar. He said Fëanor, being so incredibly fiery and potent even at birth, had drained so much of her spirit.
Drained her.
Yeah. The idea was that part of the parent, not just physically but spiritually, passes into the child. It implies elvish power, their essence, is finite. Giving life, especially to someone as powerful as Fëanor, had a massive cost for the parent.
That's incredible. It really paints elves not as endlessly powerful, but as beings with real biological or spiritual limits.
It does. And it fits with Aragorn's comment later in Minas Tirith. He wishes Elrond was there, saying Elrond is the eldest of all our race and has the greater power.
Suggesting power grows with age or is tied to their long existence?
Exactly. It implies power accumulates, or maybe it's just tied to their inherent being, their longevity. It's not just about learning spells.
Wow, okay, so it's woven right into their very being. Physical, spiritual, not just a skill they use, but part of who they are, what they give up. It's like a cosmic balance sheet.
That's a good way to put it. Every gain, every powerful act seems to have a corresponding debit somewhere.
Which brings up other kinds of limits. What about, say, moral choices or just limits on creativity?
Absolutely. The constraints weren't just about energy levels. There were moral dimensions, too.
Like what?
Well, among the Eldar, the elves, the greatest healers avoided war. Tolkien noted that taking life actively interfered with the ability to heal.
So they had to choose, like Elrond.
Exactly. Elrond is this powerful lord, has immense knowledge, but we see him primarily as a healer, like with Frodo's Morgul wound. He offers counsel, sanctuary, but doesn't ride out to fight Sauron directly. It suggests a fundamental choice tied to the nature of his power.
A sort of ethical constraint built into the magic itself.
Seems like it. And then you have limits on creation. This is really fascinating.
How so?
Sometimes elves, or even dwarves, could make something incredibly powerful, but only once. They could never replicate it.
Fëanor and the Silmarils?
The perfect example.
Huh.
3 jewels holding the light of the trees of Valinor. Unique, irreplaceable. When the Valar asked him to break them open to restore the trees after they were destroyed,
He refused.
he refused. And not just out of pride, though there was plenty of that. He said he couldn't do it again. Making them had taken something essential, something unrepeatable, maybe from him, maybe from the world's resources at that time.
So even the act of supreme creation had a final cost.
Yes. And this limitation, interestingly, extended even to the Valar, the godlike beings. Yavanna, the Vala of growing things, couldn't just remake the 2 trees from scratch after Ungoliant poisoned them.
Really? Even a Val?
Even a Vala. She needed the light that was preserved in the Silmarils to even have a chance of restoring them. It shows that even divine power in Tolkien's world wasn't infinite or arbitrary. Creation had rules, had costs, required specific essences that might not be available again.
That paints a much richer, more complex picture of power in Middle-earth than just magic.
It really does.
So what does this all mean then? If Tolkien thought all this through, these costs, these limits, why isn't it just spelled out clearly in The Lord of the Rings? Why did those authors at the con get it wrong?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Martinez addresses it in the article. He basically says Tolkien excised many minor points of explanation from the final story.
Cut them out for pacing, maybe?
Probably. For narrative flow. It leads to that debate. Should he have left more clues in, maybe prevented some criticism? Or is the story stronger, more focused, without getting bogged down in explaining magical mechanics?
It's a tough balance.
It really is. On one hand, yeah, maybe fewer people would have scoffed if he'd put in a few more lines explaining the strain on Gandalf or the nature of the Elven Rings. But on the other hand, does the average reader need to know the intricate metaphysics while Frodo is trying to get to Mordor?
Probably not, no. It might just slow things down.
Exactly. So Martinez concludes, and I think it's right, that despite Tolkien maybe streamlining things editorially, there was clearly more to it than just Gandalf uttered a spell and something happened. Yeah, a whole complex, consistent philosophical system was there, rooted in being, consequence, morality. And that depth, even if it's hidden, is maybe a lesson for other writers too. The deep structure can be there even if you don't show every single beam and joist.
What an incredible deep dive. Okay, so for you, our listener, the big takeaway here is pretty clear. Tolkien's magic, especially Elvish magic, definitely had costs. big ones.
Absolutely. Just not the kind you might find in a rule book.
Right. They were woven into life, into spirit, into consequences, even into ethics. It wasn't about spell points. It was about the essence of power itself and what wielding it, or even just existing with it, truly costs.
Well put.
So here's a thought to leave you with. When you look at other stories, other worlds, or even, real world things, economics, politics, relationships, maybe think about those hidden costs, those biological limits. What's the real price of power or success or creation, even when it's not obvious on the surface?
That's a great question.
Oh.
The deepest costs are often the least visible.
Indeed. And remember, this whole exploration was inspired by Michael Martinez's fantastic work on the Middle-earth blog. Seriously, if you want to go deeper, it's an amazing resource.
It really is. Lots of great articles.
Yeah. If this got you thinking, check out some of the other stuff there. Martinez has pieces answering questions like, who were the rings of power made for? That's a good one. Or, can dwarves use magic?
Ooh, that's always debated.
Right. And even, did Aragorn use any magic? Lots to explore.
Definitely worth checking out.
So go forth, keep asking questions, and continue your own deep dives into knowledge.
So I wanted to add another comment now that they're finished. The Valar were angelic beings. They were not divine beings. They were not gods. AI hosts call them godlike beings in a couple of places, but then they go on to kind of imply that they are the gods of Middle-earth or something like that. And that's a very complicated issue that I'll have to discuss in another podcast. I hope you enjoy this a little bit more than you've enjoyed the previous ones. Thank you all for listening to these podcasts. I'm going to continue experimenting with, I don't know, presentation or something. Someone suggested I could just read my articles. I don't know if I want to do that, but we'll see where the future takes us. I hope you'll be there with me. Bye.